about debts? How is debt divided in a divorce in Wisconsin?
It's divided similarly like asset. They will equally divide out debts. Now, if one person's keeping more assets, then the court would typically give them more debt. And if one person's taking less debt, they will probably get less assets, but they'll try to come up with a fair way to divide those as well.
So they're going to look at the entirety of the balance sheet as it relates to assets and debts and try to make the bottom line number equal out for both parties.
Absolutely. They want an equal division of assets and debts for the parties.
What about inheritance? How is that divided and how's that treated in a divorce?
Inheritance is actually the only exception to marital property law here in Wisconsin, because marital property law presumes everything that you bring in is marital except for gift or inheritance. So if you can prove that you inherited money from a family member or a friend in a will or a trust or some other instrument, and you can show that those funds were given to you and that you kept them separate, you can likely get back that entire amount.
What if you didn't keep it separate?
Then that becomes a little bit of a legal argument. Did you commingle it? Can we then trace it back to you? So say, for instance, you got $100,000 cash, you kept $50,000 separate, but you put $50,000 in the joint account, and then over the years, that joint account money was going in and out. It's going to be very hard to trace that $50,000 that was commingled with marital funds, but the other funds, you will more than likely be able to show that you kept those separate.
So non-joint bank accounts, are those considered marital property?
Yes, anything that you acquired while you're married is still marital, even if it just has one person's name on the account. You know, there are many times when people create individual checking accounts and they put money into a joint. That individual checking account is still marital.
And I would imagine the same would be true if one person was on the house and the other person wasn't.
Absolutely. And what the court looks at is, even though one person's name is titled on it, all the funds that got put into paying off the mortgage or repairs while you guys were married was marital. So that's why they presume, again, that if you purchase a house during the marriage, that it's marital, even if only one spouse's name is titled on it.
So that kind of leads me to my next question is, so who gets the house in a divorce? How's that large asset divided out in a divorce?
So the court wants to first find out who wants to keep the house. If neither party wants it, then the court's going to tell you to sell it. But if both parties wants it, they typically get a little bit more history as to the purchase, you know, who put down the down payment, who can afford it, moving forward and getting it refinanced. And also what other assets or debts is the person who wants the house going to keep. So it's not going to be a windfall for either party. If that party then gets the house, then they'll probably get something less of other assets.
So if they do get the house and there's not a lot of equivalent assets, but they have a lot of debt, they're probably going to have to consume that to balance it off. Would that be correct?
Yes. So if the spouse who gets the house who has a lot of equity in the house, then they're going to have to more than likely take on more debt.
So is it illegal to hide money during this process of property division? So if one party was to hide money from the other party, how would that be handled in court?
The court will not favor the party who hid the property at all, and more than likely it will punish them in some regard. What the court is requiring and what state law requires that you fully and honestly disclose all your income, assets, and debts. And so if you don't do that and the court finds out later, and it all depends on the facts, but normally there's some punishment for not disclosing it. Maybe an unequal award to your spouse for the asset because you kept it hidden. But the court gets to determine the remedy.
And if there is a suspicion that someone is doing that, what could you do as an attorney to help facilitate proving or disproving that claim?
An attorney can help by subpoenaing records from banks or different organizations. They can take what's called depositions, which is have the person sit in the room and we collect information by asking them questions with a court reporter. We use that as evidence, again, to prove that the person knowingly hid the asset. And then also, an attorney can help you by outlining, common tricks that people try to do in order to hide something. So it all depends on the facts, but Normally attorneys have a little bit more experience in giving you tips on what to look for.
Thank you for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. Your interaction with our content is greatly appreciated. Visit sterlinglawyers.com to learn more about our firm and meet our attorneys.